Hi, leadership is hard, but sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be, right? Here's one of the most common ways that we make it harder than it needs to be. We try. Or more precisely, we say, I'll try. When we're asked to do something, almost anything, we say, well, that's a good idea. That sounds good. We should do that. Sure, I'll try. Have you ever run into somebody on the street and you talk with them for a while and they say, you know what, we should do lunch sometime. And you say back to them, you bet, we should do lunch. That's a great idea. Let's do that. I'll try to reach out to you in the next week or two. Do you think you're ever going to have lunch with them? Nope. In fact, whenever I hear the word try coming out of someone's face, what I actually hear is, there's probably something good in that idea, but I'm going to leave room in my head and in my calendar so that I don't have to make any commitments. After all, the weather could change. I could find $1 on the sidewalk. I could have a bad hair day. There might be a sale at the mall. There might be traffic. I might find anything else to do other than that. So I'll try. What I hear when someone says, okay, I'll try to do that is, nope, not going to happen. Do you work with people who don't do what they say they're going to do? If you do, you've started to develop an inner voice in your head that says, yeah, right, whenever they say that they will try to do something. Even if you get specific with them with deadlines and then they don't come through, your inner narrator whispers, yeah, right, you better have plan B. And it won't take long for you to limit your interactions and decrease your dependence on that person. You'll just start to work around them. What about you? What kind of person are you? Do you make sure that your yes is truly a yes and your no is truly a no? Are you reliable? Are you trustworthy in the small things? Do you make promises and keep promises? I don't mean those great big promises. In fact, there probably aren't very many great big ones, but I mean the little ones. Sociologists call those little promises non-binding cooperative agreements. How's that? They are these non-binding cooperative agreements, the glue that holds friendships together, holds workplace together. It's what makes projects continue. It holds culture and small groups together. They're the glue. By the way, kind of a sidebar here. When we don't make and keep promises, we are left in organizations to create hard, visible structures that enforce behavior. The more of these hard structures are in place in an enterprise or an organization or even a small part of society, the less important it is for us to keep and make our promises, and also the less healthy that enterprise is. There's some old wisdom that says, let your yes be a yes in action. Act it out. And let your no be a no in action. Anything in between your yes and your no is kind of rotten. Yes means making a promise. Well, so does no. No also means making a promise. That in-between stuff, in between my yes and my no, that's kind of that soft, I'll try sort of thing, is what I like to call faking a promise. You've done it with yourself, you've done it with others many, many times. Instead of making a promise, you fake a promise. The faking of the promise is, I should, and I'll get to that. I want to. And you're constantly building this long list of things that you might get to later that you should do. And you're kind of promising yourself, but you're not really promising yourself. It's in between your yes and your no. You're not making a promise. You're faking a promise. All right, so you get that idea. How can we be better at this? In 2009, Baumgartner and Fischbacher published a really interesting set of research that described some of the neurological underpinnings of what I've come to call the making or faking of promises. And they found, this is so intriguing to me, that when we make a promise of any kind, The neurochemical cocktail that's kind of been created and then unleashed in us is just the same as what happens when we play in a sport that we usually win. We experience optimism and control and clear thoughts and agency and all the neurochemicals that come with it. Now lean in on this one. They also found, here's the kicker, that when we fake a promise, again, my term, not theirs, our neurochemistry matches the cocktail in our brain and in our body when we are deliberately lying and we know we're lying. That's why I call this making a promise or faking a promise. Everything in your workplace is actually held together by promises. Hundreds of promises are made each week, and when we make and keep our small promises to one another, our ideas become reality and our teams thrive and our work matters and we have an impact and an outcome that's measurable. And when we don't keep our promises to each other, everything we do is harder. So what does it sound like if you are a promise maker? Well, you'll say things like, before I commit, let me think about it. You'll say, okay, I can do that if, and then you're counting the cost. If I stop this or add that. You say, all right, okay, I will do that. You don't say other words. You say, I'm going to do this right now so that I can get moving and fulfill that promise. When you make a promise, you start moving right away. It also sounds like, no, I can't do that. Or, no, I'm unwilling to do that. Or, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't promise that I'm going to do that. That's what a promise maker sounds like. Because you remember, if you make a promise, it's either a yes or a no, and it's none of this stuff in between. A little bit of a side note, this can be particularly difficult for people who are people pleasers. If it's very important to you to have everyone like you all the time in the moment, this will be particularly difficult for you. Then what does it sound like if you're a promise faker? Remember, those are not the people who say no or say yes. They're the people who say, I'll try. What does it sound like? Well, they often use the word try. Oh, I'll try to do that. I want you to do what I do. Whenever you hear, I'll try, I want you to play that tape in your head. In fact, I even say it out loud to people sometimes. When they say, I'll try to do that, I'll say, so that means you're not going to do it, right? Folks don't like that much, but it helps. What does it sound like if you're a promise faker? You'll say, I'll try. You'll say, if I can make it. You'll say, well, that's my plan. You'll say, that's my goal. You might even say, sure, or maybe. Those are words that are in between the yes and the no. They are promise fakers. So remember, if you're faking a promise, the most tragic part of that is that you're likely faking that promise to yourself as well. You're saying, I really intend to do that. And you expect to get credit for how much you intend to do it, but it's not a promise. The difference between I'll try and I will is worlds apart. And when you say, I will do that, I commit to do that, and it's a promise, you will do it. Okay, so what can you do with all this? How can you be a lot better at making rather than faking the promise? Number one, get real. Does it matter to you? This is just you and me. You're not watching this with anybody else. This is just you and me talking here. Does it even matter to you to be trustworthy? Does it matter to you to be the kind of person upon whom others rely when you say yes or when you say no? That is actually what you do. Because if it doesn't matter to you, if what matters more to you is making everyone feel good around you or happy around you in the moment, not in the long term, because it won't last. If that's what matters to you, then hit pause or exit the video right now, because the rest of this isn't going to matter to you. But if it does matter to you to be a reliable person, a dependable person, and to get great things done, then you can move on. So, what do you do next? Listen to that inner narrator you've got. Is being trustworthy more valuable to you than being nice in the moment? Because you know there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Here's the third thing you can do. Actually call it a promise. Call it a commitment, not an idea or a plan or a wish list or a to-do list. Call it what it is. This is a promise. This is a commitment. Whether you're making that promise just to yourself or to somebody else. Here's the fourth thing you can do. Whenever someone asks you to do something that you need to change your momentum to do, you're going to stop this or start that or double down on something in order to get this thing done. Whenever someone asks you to make a commitment, pause. Don't just jump on it and say, you bet I can do that, because that's what people pleasers do. They just say yes all the time. But maybe you could pause for just a hot minute and think about it. Fifth, before you promise, prune. Prune before you promise. Because if your life is already full and you just said yes to something else, you're going to have to either drop the ball with that or drop the ball with something else. Make room to fulfill your promises. Here's the sixth thing. If you make a promise and you prune before you promise, put it on your calendar. Write it on your calendar. Don't rely on your memory alone in order to fulfill the promise you just made. Here's the seventh idea. You can pivot if you make a promise, but you're not going to be able to fulfill it in exactly the same time that you thought you would. You can pivot, but only if that pivot enables you to still fulfill the promise. All right. You're a leader, you're a manager, you're a supervisor. Teach the people that you lead and manage and supervise, the people you influence to do great things, teach them the power of the promise by being an example of someone who doesn't try, but someone who promises, someone who does. Because remember, whatever you permit, you promote. Here's a pro tip, by the way. Ditch the pathological optimism. Stop relying on those promise fakers who say yes but do no. You can only build and do great things and make amazing outcomes. You can only do the stuff that matters when you build with people who are promise makers. Their yes is their yes, their no is their no, not the promise fakers. Here's another pro tip. Stop using the word try. Whenever you hear it, change it to it's either a yes or a no. I know, leadership can be hard, but please don't make it harder than it needs to be by letting your yes be a maybe and your no be a maybe, I'm not sure. This is a really small change you can make, and when you do it, it will make a big difference right away. Keep up the good work. Here's to you.